Good evening, guys. Welcome to another episode of Amber Unfiltered. Today I'm going to try to finish up my book review of Sky Full of Elephants by Cebo Campbell. But before we do that, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, if you want to cash at me at Amber Unfiltered Show, that'd be greatly appreciated. So, first of all, I'm going to show you guys what the book cover looks like. Hopefully this looks okay on camera. It took me a little minute to figure out what the cover meant, and I was like, okay, as I progressed in the book. So I do have another video that kind of talks about the beginning of the book. I think it's like the first 100 pages, and my initial reaction to it. What was I gonna say? So this kind of picks up from there. So Charlie, who is the main character, he is a black professor at Howard. I was gonna say Harvard. Howard, and he is reunited with his estranged daughter. He's never met her before, but he knows she exists. She knows he exists. She basically has no other living relatives, so he's kind of like a last resort for her. So they arrive in Alabama. They've come across the king and queen, or actually, no, I'm lying. Let me back up. They're basically, once they get off the plane or once they arrive in Alabama, they're basically taken hostage. I don't even want to say that. That sounds so brutal, but they come across this group of kids that are like, hey, we're about to take you to the king and queen. Now, for real, this sounds so bad, and I don't mean for it to. I thought that it was about to meet like a KKK leader. Like, I'm not even gonna hold you. I was like, what in the white power is going on? I was like, I don't get it. But they weren't. It was actually kind of like Wakanda. There was a black king and a black queen, but it wasn't like a palace or a castle or like as ornate as Wakanda, but it definitely gave that vibe. They were like living in a suburban neighborhood, but they were like well off. They had like servants, they had like people in and out of their house, like they were doing like ancestral practices and rituals. So that was very interesting. But it was kind of like Africa if it was in Alabama. Yeah, that's actually a great way of putting it. But it low key reminded me of Wakanda. I kept thinking of Angela Bassett every time the queen came in, to a scene. So they meet with them and they're like, "What the f do you want?" And the dad's basically like, I'm here to get my daughter to Alabama because this is where she wants to go. She wants to go to a specific spot in Alabama. I think it's called Orange Beach. So they meet this king and queen, and then the daughter, who's half white, half black, she kind of comes across as sisterly figure who kind of takes her under her wing. And she starts to come into herself, and she also starts to come into her blackness, which is interesting because she's been raised by her white family, and she's been taught to hate her features and perceive black people in a negative light. So that's kind of conflicting for her. And she kind of like tries to run away, but they're just like, "Nah, sister, we see you, and like when you're ready, we here." So come to find out, the king of Alabama had created this machine that caused the event, which is basically the white people walking into the water. Um, the machine basically like raised, I don't want to say like raised black people's frequencies, but it like tapped into their consciousness, like all their trauma, all their pain, all the generational and ancestral things that they were dealing with, but just also like in their day-to-day waking life, like racism and things like that, and like their rage. And that was a pretty interesting concept. I liked that, but I just think the execution wasn't really that great for me. Also, it was very wordy, and I think he was trying to be like very poetic. There were some scenes I'm like, oh yeah, I'm over here crying, shedding tears and shit, but I just think that it was a little too wordy for me. I wanted more. The buildup was so good, and then I think when we got to what it was, the conflict, it just didn't do it for me. And I was like, I could have seen so much more. We could have really went there, and I just think that it fell short somehow. I don't know what I was expecting. I've never read a book like this. It was very sciencey, very engineering based. So I was like, that kind of got lost on me because I'm more artsy or creative leaning, or even like more English, like literary, leaning. I was like, okay, the science stuff is kind of like not really appealing to me, or the technical stuff. I was like, I'm kind of lost on that. But I understand they needed it for the story. So then there was a really pivotal scene that I actually really liked that I'm still thinking about. So, there's a scene where Charlie is taken to an old house where enslaved Africans were kept. I don't know if it was like a enslaved Africans like quarters, like a cabin or a lodge, I should say, but it was somewhere attached to a plantation, I would say. So Charlie is taken there, and he's like thrown in this dark, like heavy place. And this woman comes. Her name is Seraphine, I believe, and she's like I don't want to say hoodoo. She might be considered like a hoodoo healer or priestess. I forget what the exact word is, but she's like somewhere in that realm, like a spiritual um, leader and practitioner, I should say. So he's dipped in this bath that like it again. It kind of reminded me of Wakanda. Remember when T'Challa like went into the like ancestral realm? It kind of was like that, but it was in like bath water, and like he kind of let go of all his anger, his rage, his pain from being locked up, and like that loss of his innocence, but also his livelihood. And like I think he like connects with his mother who passed while he was in prison. Like it was very deep. That was actually one of my favorite parts of the book, just because I am very spiritual and I am in tune with my ancestors. And I was like, damn, sometimes I think, oh, I wish there was a place I could visit them other than my dreams. But I'm like, they're in me, they're in other people, they're in people around me. So I don't know. And I don't know what people's, religious or spiritual practices are. I'm just sharing for me. Um, but yeah, that part was really, really deep. I was like, damn, I don't know if I could do that, because that's pretty rough. But I know that certain areas hold certain energy, especially from that time. And sometimes when I've gone certain places, I'm like, I wonder if something did happen to my ancestors here. Like, I could definitely feel it sometimes. Like I said, I'm super intuitive. But anyway, so Charlie and Sydney get acclimated with this black family. Like they're like, oh, Uncle Charlie and this, that, and that. They're in like Sister Sydney. Like they start to find family. They find family. Sydney and Charlie find family with each other, but also with this other black family. And it's kind of like they need each other. And then they basically ask Charlie to turn the machine back on, and he's like, no, because he's afraid of that event happening again, but he's also afraid of losing his daughter. So he's compromised ethically, because he's like, this is not ethical science. It could kill more people. And then is it better to kill more people and save the ones that have suffered the most, or, the opposite? So that was pretty interesting, that internal struggle. And then Sydney, there's some other stuff that happens. There was actually another really good scene where there's a girl named Nona who acts as a sisterly figure to Sydney. So she's like the daughter of the king and queen. And for the love of God, I can't remember the king and queen's name. Actually, I think the king's name was Hosea or Jose. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's Hosea. So I want to say Hosea. I forget. Vivian was the queen's name. She was fire. Again, she was giving me Angela Bassett and Wakanda vibes. Queen Ramunda, for real. But so Nona and Sydney develop a sisterhood, and then Nona takes her to this like farm or like greenhouse area. And it's interesting, they have black people who suffered from the event and kind of had trauma from it. So it was interesting. They farmed there, and it was like a rehabilitative farm, but then they would talk to people about their pain and like exchange, like break bread with strangers. But it was like they would sit face to face and just start talking about their feelings, start talking about their experiences. And Sydney has a connection with an older black gentleman, and that was a really touching scene, because it's like, damn, if only we could talk more about our scars and our wounds and our trauma and like work through it instead of just repressing it. But it's like a lot of stuff causes us to repress them, so that was pretty interesting. And then Sydney also starts to fall for the king and queen's son, Fela, who I think is named after Fela Kuti. But that was interesting. It was interesting also seeing the milestones that Sydney got to achieve, because she was stuck in a house for a year after her family took their lives and walked in the water. But she like learns how to drive from Charlie. She like experiences like a first love type of thing. She starts to come into her power and her girlhood or her femininity, which is really interesting. And Charlie even begins to let go of some of his pain and some of his darkness and some of his like I don't want to say self-sabotage, but like inflicting like that self, what is that word? Like self-inflicted like exile, basically, like because he feels like he's bad or he's impure or he's evil. But he starts to realize, no, he's not. He just had something really fucked up happen to him, and he can move past it. He can live a good quality of life, even though his life was taken from him in some aspect, and he'll never get that time back. So that was pretty interesting. So then I forget what happens. Let me think about this for a second. So then Sydney is like, I still want to go to Orange Beach, Alabama, like because she's under the assumption that her aunt is still alive. Her aunt had left a letter at the house that she was staying in that with her family before Charlie, like her white side of the family, like her mom and her step family, I should say. And so that's what's made her go to Orange Beach. But it's confusing because it's like her aunt she thought was white, so how is she still alive? Well, come to find out, her aunt's black. She's been passing as a white woman for as long as she can remember. So I thought that was interesting. I wish he like expounded on that more, because that's a really deep topic and is very controversial. But even though I don't condone passing, I completely understand it because it was like a matter of life and death for black people back then, and it still is in this country. So, not to get all political, but I definitely think so. So I was like, I wonder why she chose to do that, because she felt like life was going to be easier. But it's like, by you ignoring your blackness, you're ignoring yourself. You're ignoring your heritage. You're ignoring a percentage of yourself. And I just can't get with that. And I've always told Nick, like, our kids will know that they're both. Like, that I'm going to make it clear, like, you are black. This is your history. I want to show them all aspects. That's something else, sidebar, that I would like to do. I told him I think I want to start our kids off in homeschooling. A lot of people don't agree with that, but I was like, I want to be the one to teach them their history. I'm really savvy in school, and I feel like that could rub off on them, but I also want them to go in a classroom knowing who they are, knowing where their ancestors came from, and also take pride in their heritage, because I feel like, unfortunately, a lot of schools don't teach that to black children or mixed black children, and they have a shattered sense of self, because I know that I definitely did, because the only thing I seen was like bondage, oppression, or brutality. I really didn't see anything else. Like, right now I'm writing a paper on black cowboys for my humanities class, and I was like, bro, I didn't even really know about black cowboys till like a few years ago. Sidebar, there's a movie with Idris Elba and Caleb McLaughlin, the little black boy from Stranger Things, where it talks about black cowboys, and it has real black cowboys in it acting as black cowboys. But that was like one of the first times I really had heard about it. I probably have seen it in the past, but it doesn't stick out in my memory. I've only seen white cowboys, especially white male cowboys. So, but anyway, so Sydney is like, yeah, I'm finna go to Orange Beach. Like, I'm about to do what it do. So she like steals Fela's car. Actually, no, Fela comes with her. And he's like, yeah, I'm about to like hold you down. Like, if you want to go, you want to go. So she sees her aunt down there, and her aunt's like giving her all the tea. Like, yeah, I passed. Yeah, I know what happened to your dad. I know your uncle lied on him and said he R-worded, his sister. But I kind of stood behind him, because what else could I do? So she's like a bystander to Charlie's downfall, his violence. And I just didn't like that. And I'm like, she could have stood up for him, but she didn't. And I just was like, we probably do know somebody like that who thinks that they're justified in that. But I was like, I can't fuck with that. So then Sydney's aunt is like married to a preacher who's convincing people who are in the land of the living to walk, to kind of atone for the people that walked before in the main event. Or I'm not sure if atone is the correct word, but he's like saying, by you guys sacrificing yourselves, the rest of us can like live cleansed of our sins. So I think the main event of white people walking into the water is symbolic. It's kind of like a baptism, like cleaning your sins, cleansing like racial sins or racial tension, which I thought was really interesting. But again, the execution, like if you read it, I think you'll understand what I'm talking about. And even the way that it's written, the words are very deep. It's almost like you have to have, I don't want to say a superior mind, because that's not fair to the reader, because there are very intelligent people out here. I think that the word choice is very strong, and I don't want to say that the author should water down his words. I just think that it read almost like a scholastic journal, like a scholarly journal or article. Like, it was very, like, I remember reading Michelle Obama's memoir, and I couldn't get past the first couple pages, because it's like, it literally sounds like a lawyer spit up on the page. Like, that's kind of how he wrote a little bit, and I was like, that kind of didn't resonate with me. I'm like, I don't want to say speak black or speak white, because that's not right, but I speak more relatable, more like we kin. Like, I didn't really feel like that kindredness entirely from the book, and that's probably wrong to say, but that's just my personal opinion. I probably have a very unpopular opinion about the book. I actually looked on YouTube earlier to see if there was any reviews, and there's not a whole lot of them. I actually started watching this one black lady's review. I think her name is like Shelby with the book club or something. I need to go back and finish it. And then I watched this white guy's, I forget what his name was, and it was very interesting takes from both sides. I was like, I do want to hear both sides and hear what they had to say. But so Sydney goes to Alabama, and then her aunt gives her all the tea, and then she finds out that Fela's dad, Hosea, built that machine, and that's what contributed to her family's detriment or demise or deaths. So she's butthurt, and I was like, rightfully so, because that's the only family she knew. Now she don't have nobody. She's like an orphan, basically. So she runs off with Fela's truck, and Fela's stranded. So Sydney's dad comes down with the crew, like the kids from the King and Queen's like compound or whatever, and they run down there to go find her. And then Charlie confronts Agnes, which is the aunt that lured her down there with the letter saying, "Hey, I'm still alive." And then I'm trying to think. they don't find Sydney. She just keeps running away. Like she's crossing different borders, different states. And then, so before, Charlie was not going to turn the machine back on, but he wants to turn it on to get Sydney to connect with her blackness and her heritage, but also to connect with him. So that was a pretty interesting choice, because it was like, I kind of felt like he was going to change his mind because something was going to bring him to his knees to, or like force his hand, which was his daughter. But it was very beautiful how he did begin to love his daughter, and he did develop those fatherly instincts relatively fast, and that made me believe that he would have been a good dad if he was free. But I wonder if her family would have even given him the chance, like her Sydney's mom's family would have given him the chance to be a father, to like a present father to her. And Sydney, she's like grieving, she's like in mourning, but she becomes like a new person kind of by the end of the book. But I thought it was interesting that they, at the end of the book, they didn't connect. Like, I kind of wish that Sydney had come back home and realized that there was a place for her, even though she was reminded of this and told this. But yeah, I don't know. I was a little unsatisfied with the ending, and Nick always makes fun of me because he's like, you hate endings. Like, I hate endings of TV shows, films. I'm like, why do they end it like that? Like, they could have ended it like this. I'm like, it could have ended better, but it's like, sometimes we don't get the happy endings or the ideal endings. Sometimes something totally different. I think I hate, like, the curveball, or, like, the, oh, why didn't it end like this? Because I would have made it end like this, but it's like, I'm not the one who made this body of work or this project. So, I don't know. I kind of have, like, a cross to bear with that, but like I said, or I can't remember if I said it earlier, maybe like a 6.5 out of 10, maybe a 7 out of 10. This author is relatively new to me. Yeah, he is actually new to me. I've never heard of him before. He does other types of mediums or art forms, so that was pretty interesting. I tried to look him up to see if he was on a book tour, but I think it already happened, or maybe he didn't do one, or it was very limited cities. But I was like, okay, if he released something else, depending on the premise, I might give it another try, but I don't know. I wasn't used to the sense of writing, or the style of writing. You know, I'm trying to force myself to read stuff that I wouldn't normally read. I am in a book club, but it's kind of been on hiatus for a little bit. But we've tried all types of genres, and I'm like, damn, I'm reading stuff I would never read. So just opening my mind is a good thing, I guess. But I love reading. I've always loved reading. It's my escape, but right now I feel like I want to stop, only because I was like, I feel like it's time to tell my story. So I started a little something something. I don't want to say what, but it's going pretty good, and I've been trying to be consistent, like writing every day or every other day. And it's so funny because one of my friends, actually a couple people in my corner, were like, you need to write a novel. And I thought I was gonna go to a book of poems, but everybody's like, no, you need to write a novel. And I'm like, ah. To me, the idea of writing a novel just seems so daunting. It seems so like overwhelming and large. It's like, that's a lot of work for one person. Then you have to go up and tweak it and tweak it and tweak it. And to be honest, I hate editing with a passion. So that's like one of my gripes. I was like, I picked one of the craziest professions because it requires a lot of patience, and I don't have any, but I was like, bro, I can learn. Like, actually making content has made me more patient, because I'm telling you, I'd be in my office all day, ass hurting, not getting up, not peeing, not eating. Like, I'd be so locked in. Like, I'll sit in here and wait for it to download, make sure everything went okay, review it, like I'll rewatch it, make sure it sounds okay, make sure the graphics are okay. Like, I'm on it. Like, Nick told me, he was like, I'm so proud of you. Like, I'd be so tired, but I'd be like, I'd be so happy when the final product comes out, because I'm like, I did that. Like, I put all my work in. Like, he still helps me, but I would say a good percent, probably like 85 to 90, I do by myself. And then he comes in every now and then to help me with just little stuff. But I'm really invested in this. But yeah, I feel like it's time for me to say what I need to say. Something I've always wanted to write about is being Black in the workplace, especially a Black woman. So maybe something will come of that. But yeah, I was happy that I gave this book a chance. And it was one of the most different books I've ever read, or one of the most unique books I ever read. But it wasn't my favorite, like I said, for the reasons I expressed earlier. But I would say give it a try. You know, if you need something that's a little bit different, the reviewer that I watched, I think Shelby with the book club or something like that is her name. Forgive me if I got it wrong. She gave some really interesting points. I was like, maybe I need to think about this more. But it had like those spiritual elements and things like that I was looking for, and like that kindredness, or like that kinfolk spirit of like Blackness and Black people, and like the unity I really liked. But I don't know, it just, I was like, oh my gosh, it was going like this, and then it started going like this, and then it was like, and I was like, I don't know. But anyway, let me know what you guys think about this review. I hope that your week is starting off well. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.